I'll just give it a couple moments here, make sure that we're live. I do appreciate you guys coming in. And first of all, it's every Wednesday night was working for a while, and it's been a little bit tough as of late, trying to stick to that with everything going on. But in the spirit of that, I decided to keep everything, or at least try to go back to that Wednesday night live Q&A, where you guys can ask your questions and make things happen. So, the also disclaimer here is I got about 40 minutes, so we're not even going to make it to a full hour where I can do this tonight. But I definitely wanted to engage with you guys. I appreciate you guys watching. I got some guys who recently discovered my channel within the past year or two. I've got some guys who've been subscribed and watching since forever. So I'm just glad for all of you. I'm glad you guys are here, whether it's old or new subscribers. I'm glad you guys like my content and watch. And like I said, I got about 45 minutes, and then I got to take care of some other stuff. But I want to spend time with you guys tonight to answer your questions. So let's see, from Tempest, he says hello, or Patriot. I know you from the old days, so I appreciate you being here. And I know Patriot, you've commented a couple times on my videos, so I apologize. Been super busy, but I have not been ignoring you. And I look at every link or thing that you share, and I appreciate you for being there. We also have Ethan here. Yo, what's up? But it's good to have you guys here. And like I said, I'm really glad, from newer or older subscribers, I'm glad you guys are all here. And this is kind of your opportunity to ask any questions. I'm not a lawyer or a politician. I'm not qualified in many ways to answer questions for you guys. I consider myself a moron when it comes to things like that, but I would totally like to open the floor and answer questions you guys have. So let's see. Put on the glasses because I'm getting old. And let's see what we got. Let's see. Did you say that you were going to keep Wednesdays? I'm going to try to keep Wednesdays. So Miss Texas, she is doing remote school right now, just because of COVID and everything else going on. So why that matters, or why that's part of this discussion, is I do have a major or a bachelor's in history with a minor in English. And when she has papers or labs or things like that, I do proofread it, and will help with spelling and grammar and stuff, and things like that. And that usually happens for her last semester. Wednesday was totally open and in the clear. This semester, she has things due on Wednesdays and Fridays and a couple other nights. So where Wednesday used to be good, this semester it's not as good. And I think you guys can understand, but just proofreading her papers and things, Wednesday gets a little bit tough. Plus, I usually work later on Wednesdays, just doing gunsmithing. Today I was doing the MP7, the 240s, and everything. So sometimes we'll have Black Rifle Coffee with video shoots, or we'll be doing some things. Sometimes we'll have Wednesdays. We'll schedule the other bay for parties, film shoots, other stuff. So when before, not too long ago, Wednesday was awesome. Wednesday has gotten a little bit more complicated. So if there's a day of the week that would suit you guys better, maybe we can move there, because we have, at least for me, what was recently once good to go, is now a little bit more tight. So still want to be here for you guys. So you guys let me go. You guys let me know. What day might be better for you, but Wednesdays a little bit tighter these days. So just that's the full disclosure on that. Um, let's see. I'm gonna need my glasses again. Did you hear about gun control being discussed in Congress next week? Yeah, so we might chiefly be talking about HR 127 out of Texas, of all places. Um, which, for those of you who haven't lived in Texas or spent time there, it's a very interesting state. There's places like Austin that are very more progressive or more, there's a lot of Californians there. It's a very interesting place versus old school Dallas, where all the oil money is, versus Houston and the Eastern Woodlands and everything else, versus El Paso, which is where I lived for a while. It's a lot of land, huge territory, lots of people there. So you can't really sum up Texas in one statement or thing, and that's kind of side related to the fact that that might explain why we have something like HR 127 coming out of there, which I've actually been working on an almanac based on that. Um, so I don't want to spoil the ending on that. I will answer questions on that that you guys have. Um, but I don't think it's the end of the world. But at the same time, I still have concerns, not for now, but the recent later or a very soon to follow later. Where I don't think HR 127 is going to pass, especially with those penalties and everything else going on. You're not going to find the Democrats, even like Joe Manchin out of West Virginia. You're not going to find guys like that who are going to support that. But at the same time, I don't think this is going to be the last time we see something like that. So, but anyway, getting back to the original question or comment, um, yeah, we'll have to see what happens in Congress. The Biden Harris campaign, and I did an almanac or a podcast on this a while back, where they were preeminently interested in tackling gun control um, before even getting into office. And once they made it, Joe Biden released a statement saying we're not going to wait till the next thing or the next atrocity, the next mass shooting. We're just going to try to do this now. And everybody, um, I kind of laugh and I get disappointed that so many people are like, oh, he's going to ban guns by constitutional or executive orders or executive action. Um, and I laugh because I know that's not plausible, but I'm also sad because, like, man, for the love of Christ, can we read our Constitution and understand that an executive order can only do so much, but he knows he's going to need Congress. So, anyway, getting back to the point, interesting. They're going to be talking about next week. We're going to see how that goes. Also, staring down the barrel, no pun intended, a little bit of a very pro gun leaning Supreme Court, and even the Ninth Circuit Court, excuse me, is even favorably looking positively towards guns. Um, Sometimes it feels like the times are changing, and in this case, a little bit positive on that. So that's going to be a whole part of an almanac that I'm not in post production yet, still working on, but you guys might enjoy that. So I'm going to leave that for now. Let's see. What is your favorite caliber to shoot right now, or good ammo sources if you are willing to tell? Yes, I'm very willing to tell. My answer is actually the same answer it's been for Ethan there. Before all this ammo apocalypse and pre-election COVID riots and protesting, like before all this stuff happened about a year ago, my answer was, and still to this day, is I shoot 22 long rifle more than I shoot anything else. I got a Glock 44. I got an SR 22. I got an H&R Partner revolver. I've got a Smith & Wesson M&P 1522. Of course, I've got a Ruger 1022. There's actually, I probably own about the same amount of 22 long rifle firearms as I own from my World War II stuff, my AR-15s, 9 mils, 45, whatever. I shoot more 22 than I shoot anything else because the recoil is going to be different, but the fundamentals of marksmanship are going to be the same of sight alignment, sight picture, trigger press, grip on the gun, everything else, it's all the same. And 22 long rifle, I mean, I've got about 25 bricks of 550 rounds of 22 just stashed up. So, it's I don't want to see us in a ammunition pandemic and we can't find ammo, what's going on. But at least I remember the lessons from post Sandy Hook, and I made sure I was going to have a lot of 22 long rifles. So, to honestly answer that question, my favorite caliber to shoot is 22 long rifle because I have a lot of it. I made sure I had a lot of it. When you can find it, we're a little bit overpriced right now, but it still is much more affordable than 9 millimeter, 45, 40 cal, 5.56, any of that. So if you've got a 22 pistol and you've got a couple bricks of ammo, that'll sustain at least the way I shoot. That'll probably sustain me at least about a month and a half. So the fundamentals are going to be the same. So 22 long rifle is what I shoot the most. That was the answer previous to this. It still is the answer. And as prices have increased and availability has drastically decreased, I'm still out there just shooting 22 of like, hey, it's not perfect. I'd love to be shooting about 50 rounds every several days, maybe about 400 rounds of 9 mil a week, 200 to 300 rounds of 5.56 a week. I would love to go to my pre-COVID, kind of regimen of training, doing courses, doing some practice, but can't be found. It's expensive when you do find it, and I still need to shoot. I still got to keep my stuff sharp, and 22 is still the resounding caliber that I shoot the most. It just is. So hopefully that answers that question, but that was my answer and it still is. I shoot more 22 than I shoot anything else just because I'm going to keep shooting. I want to stay sharp, and ammo is hard to find. And when you find it, it's expensive. So, let's see, rolling up. I think they were talking about firearms transfers and background checks. Yeah, that's a whole can of worms. About universal background checks is what they like to call it in that larger subcategory of common sense gun legislation or gun laws, which it's interesting, our founding fathers never found that to be common sense, but suddenly we find it to be common sense. And I have a whole side rant on that in some of my almanacs about what I find to be common sense is not what you may find to be common sense, and what I think makes sense, especially with our Bill of Rights, may not make sense to someone else against gun rights. And I don't think you can stand up there and tell other people that they have no common sense because they don't think the way you think, which is the subject of the next almanac. But our First Amendment, I'm Mr. Second Amendment. That's mainly what I focus on. But if you want to know the truth, kind of as a side note, I am more concerned about our First Amendment than I am about our Second Amendment right now. I'm concerned about both, and I'm always pushing the Second Amendment, still writing the letters, still making the phone calls, still doing everything I've always been doing. But if you ask me honestly right now, I'm actually more concerned about our First Amendment than I am about the Second Amendment, which is a whole other thing. But universal background checks, getting back to that, that would, to make that enforceable, that would require mandatory gun registration at a federal level, even for Title I firearms, like a standard Ruger 1022 or whatever. And I'm not a fan at all, which is kind of it's going to be detailed Pretty soon here, we're not post-production, pre-production on that, but there's an almanac I'm planning on that of what's the big deal about universal background checks and gun registration. And I'm going to lay out my case as to why that is a tremendous deal. If you value individual property rights, if you value freedom, if you value privacy, if you value, agency or consent as to your property and your life, and you actually getting to make those decisions about that, that's all going to be detailed. So that's going to be forthcoming. Let's see. All right, I'm going to put my glasses on here. From Ethan, what is your favorite caliber? Okay, we already got to that. Any day is good for Patriot. Your instructional videos are age restricted. Apparently, I have to be signed in to watch them. Yes. So YouTube has made it ever increasingly difficult to upload stuff. And I've done a number of really awful things according to YouTube. I have my AR-10 lower receiver build. I have like two different versions, or actually three different versions of building an AR-15 lower. I have an AR-15 upper receiver build video that's currently in post-production, and hopefully that goes up within a week. I've put out videos that, and here's the thing: if you guys are not a content creator, and I've been doing this since about 2012, so it's about, what is that, 9 years of having a channel on YouTube. And I remember the early days, or the earlier days. I mean, I've been on YouTube since 2008. Actually, no, about 2005 or 6. And I've been on YouTube before Google owned it. Let's put it that way, if I want to date myself. And as a content creator then versus now, you could just do whatever. But these days, if you're going to upload a video, they're going to have check marks like, oh, okay, well, does it include acts of violence? Does it include, children being harmed? Do children appear in the video? Does it cover controversial topics or, hot button issues right now? Is it acts of terrorism or extreme violence or vandalism? And then at the very bottom, out of all of that really awful stuff, it asks you, is there firearms related content? So, of course, I always have to say, well, yeah. So I click yes, and then it drops down. It's like, okay, well, are you showing guns being used by, in like hunting or a range environment where it's a safe, legal, perfectly coordinated kind of thing, and there's like a million range safety officers involved in this? I'm like, well, no, it's me building an AR-15 lower receiver and hoping my channel survives tomorrow. So then you drop down, it's like, does this video include the manufacture or creation of firearms? And I technically, by the ATF and the federal government's definition, no, I'm not milling or CNC machining or drilling or creating a frame or a serialized, actual rifle or pistol frame. So by the ATF and the federal government's definition, I'm not creating a gun. I don't have a drill press. I'm not making a firearm. I'm just taking a bunch of parts and putting it together. And I've bought everything legally, passed the background checks. I have receipts and invoices for everything I bought, and I'm doing everything legally. But it asked me, are you creating a firearm? And by the ATF and federal government's definition, the answer will be no. But by YouTube, I have to assume that a bunch of, if anyone's going to audit my video, assuming YouTube has more than like 3 people that are auditing these videos, they're going to look at that and they're going to be like, yep, he's making a firearm. So I have to click yes. I'm like, okay, well, yes, according to you guys, this might be misconstrued as creating a firearm. So I click yes. And that puts me, as soon as I click yes, that puts me in the same category as like, I am showing like buildings on fire and, violence towards children and crazy, like that puts me in a category that the monetization is almost next to nothing. Risking, getting flagged or whatever, and basically being on the same level as that. So, all of that to say that some of my videos, I'm sure, are going to be age restricted. And on some of my videos, I purposely, they ask you from the onset, like, is this video meant for children? And I would love to say yes, like, hey, you can be a 12-year-old kid with your dad building an AR-15 lower and safely, responsibly, legally shooting at a gun range and having a great father-son moment. But I'm going to go with the worst course of action and the worst way this could be interpreted. And I'm just going to assume that YouTube would say, this video should not be meant for children. So I click no, it's not. So anyway, all of that to say that, yeah, I understand completely that probably at this point, I don't know, because there's no ex post facto with YouTube, retroactively. Um, a lot of my videos, probably by their definition for the YouTube community standards, are not going to be suitable for children. So you need to have an account and be 18 or older. You need to be signed in and watch it. And I don't agree with that. I don't think I'm doing anything here that's crazy. But I also understand that, at least the way things are now on YouTube, that's kind of how you have to exist without just getting totally deplatformed. So, that's, I apologize for the inconvenience, but also that's kind of how it is for the moment. But that's also part of a pretty soon almanac here about the First Amendment. And should places like YouTube and Facebook and things be considered a public utility or strictly private company, and we just don't care? So let's see. Yeah. Next comment. We now have 18 constitutional carry states. Actually, my state is about to be one of them as of a couple months from now. Yeah, which is good and bad. I think it's good in that if you legally own and possess a firearm and you would like to conceal that on your person for the act of lawful self defense outside the home, and you're not looking for problems, you just want to have your legally possessed and owned firearm on your person for lawful self defense outside the home, I think you should be able to do that. And you shouldn't have to ask daddy government or some person, may I please, act in a manner in which my life matters, please. The only downside is I would like some kind of training component to be there. I'm never going to be a fan, and I'm never going to advocate for mandatory training requirements to be in place, because I've seen how that got abused, just totally abused in California. Like, hey, we're not saying you can't have a gun. You just need the special permit that is a state authorized instructor that can give you, 20 hours of training. And it's like, well, you guys have purposely only authorized like individuals in the entire state to do this. And 20 hours of training, I'm looking at like $1,500 worth of training, assuming I can take the time off work and everything else to be there and do that with the very small pool of instructors that you decided to. So I've seen it played that way. So I'm never going to be a fan of state or government mandated training. But we got our ceilings being shot up. We got our tables and walls being shot up. We got holes in the floor. We got all kinds of crazy shit at the gun range this whole past year. And I'm still never going to ever be on the side of the government should be, mandating training, and there should, like, no, I'm just like, no. But at the same time, it's like, man, I just wish people could get some kind of universal training in the way I'd like to see it, because I don't want to complain about something without offering solutions. The way I'd like to see it is, mandatory high school graduation requirement of, you have driver's ed, first aid, sex ed. You have all these things that are mandatory to graduate high school. Let's throw in gun safety. We have over 300 million firearms in this country, uh, more guns than people in this country. We don't even know how many guns are out there, but it's a lot. And we might as well do a mandated, this is how you be safe, this is how you treat and handle firearms. Have Eddie Eagle come in there, have deactivated or guns that can't shoot, have those in there with proper effective training. This is a mandatory high school graduation requirement. There you go. Maybe that's the way to solve it. So, constitutional carry, I think it's great. You shouldn't have to ask daddy government, like, please, sir, like, does my life matter? Can I please protect my own life and family outside my home? But at the same time, I would like to see training, but also at the same time, I will never be on the team of advocating for the government requirement side of it. Never. I've just seen that abuse and I don't trust it. Never. Maybe we can find a middle ground. Maybe we can't. So, I guess when it comes to constitutional carry and a lot of other things, I'll have to, take the side of Thomas Jefferson on this one, where I'm going to prefer, dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. So let's all be dangerous and let's all be free. Fuck it. Which that's not going to go over well, just to let you know. If you ever talk to some anti-gun friends or people who don't quite see things the way that we do, the Jeffersonian approach is not going to blow over well. Trust me. Okay. Anyway, let's see. The strong body makes the mind strong. As to this, it sounds like Jefferson. A strong body makes the mind strong. Actually, yeah, that is. As to the species of exercise, I advise the gun. Yep, walk with the pistol. There you go. While this gives moderate exercise to the body, it gives boldness, enterprise, and independence to the mind. Thomas Jefferson. There you go. Okay, let's see. Harris Skinner. Hello from Dallas, Texas. Just want to say thank you. Well, thanks for being here, Harris. Appreciate it. I've been to Dallas. It's a real peach of a town. Me being the history nerd that I am, of course, had to go to the Dealey Plaza and had to check out the sixth floor museum. Had to look at all the stuff up there, and very fascinating, really awesome. I do have two of my best buddies from the Army live right outside Dallas, and it was a good time. I look forward to going back. So, obviously, I'm dating Miss Texas. Big fan of Texas. Lived there. Not as much of a fan of El Paso. That was not my favorite place I ever lived for a long time. But the rest of Texas, I think we can work with that. So, all right. Let's see. Do you still have a Constitution Almanac coming? Yes, I do. That one had to get a little bit forestalled because the ever-changing environment, and I have a special project that I've been putting money and time into recently. And finally, we're going to be covering the Black Bass Musket project, which I think I'll save that to the end. I'm not going to go on a tangent on that. I'm actually, I hope you guys can be excited about it. I'm very excited about it. It's been something I've been thinking about since 2019, actually still when I was active duty in the Army, thinking about it. This whole past year, it's been crazy with inventory and everything else, and I always meant to get around to it. But considering the circumstances, the potential future, the legal, political future when it comes to Second Amendment rights and AR-15s and things like that, I decided, you know what, the time is not right. Inventory sucks, prices are high, but this needs to happen, and it needs to happen now before we might face the prospect of something else. So the Black Bass Musket, super excited about it. And that has kind of taken precedence over the Constitution Almanac. Now, I do have, for those of you who have been here a while, I do have some constitutional. Um, they weren't almanacs at the time, but basically kind of in a podcast format. I do have a two-part series on the Constitution, way back when, and it needs to be revised with more stuff. But if I didn't have at least a foundational something there on the Constitution already from years ago, I'd be a little bit more hard pressed to do it. But right now, given the legal and political climate, especially when it comes to assault weapons and things like that, the Black Bess Musket Project has kind of taken the league uh, in terms of my money, my time, my efforts, and other things. So maybe I'll talk about that as a teaser on the end. So yes, all of that to say a constitutional almanac is coming, or I guess I should say a re-updated version. But there's some other timely things that require a little bit more attention at this time that I'm kind of pressing harder into for the moment. So stay tuned for that. Let's see. I'm just scared about gun control over the next few years. It's interesting because states are generally becoming more pro-gun, aka constitutional carry. So constitutional carry is one of a multitude of variables we can look at. Um, One thing I can tell you from the last over a year as a civilian again, in the gun shop again, we've had a metric fuck ton of brand new gun buyers. We've had husband and wife teams that are budgeting. COVID hit hard. There's not a lot of money to go around, but depending on national and local factors and things going on, they finally decided we're going to go in and we're going to purchase a firearm. And neither of us own a gun, but we made this decision as a couple and we're going to do it. We've both set aside money and saved for this. We're just going to send it. I've seen minorities, Hispanic, Asian, Black, white. I've seen everyone from the rando guy working the 7-Eleven graveyard shift to the doctor or lawyer that no one ever had a gun before, and they are rushing in to buy firearms. I've had a lot of women. That's probably my favorite. I've had a lot of women. I had one woman in particular, which is really strange because I have a friend who is adamantly anti-gun, extremely anti-gun, very progressive, very left-leaning. But she had one of her girlfriends, single girlfriend, lives by herself in a bad part of town. Basically ask about, I need to buy a gun. I have drug dealers and gangbangers outside my house almost every night. I've had to call the police multitude of times. This is my second break-in. And when the cops showed up this time, they said, you need to buy a gun because please, the third time I have to come to your house, I don't want to see you dead. Please, for the love of Christ, buy a gun. You're a woman living by yourself in a horrible place. And then that's not PC or politically correct to say, but look, I'm telling you, if you got three guys that weigh over 200 pounds just out of the fucking slammer rolling into your house and they're going to get what they want unless you have a way to even the playing field. And that police officer up in Salt Lake told her, like, hey, I don't want to come here a third time and see you dead. So please, for the love of God, get trained, buy a firearm, do something. And did a private lesson, actually 2 lessons with her, teaching her how to use her firearm, sorting through the options of what was available and what we had versus what she could buy, and actually, helping empower her to be able to prevent awful things from happening. I've That's just a whole personal anecdote tangent, but I've seen a lot of first-time gun buyers. I've seen a lot of gun buyers from all walks of life, race, ethnicity, everything else. So the bottom line is, when it comes to states being a little bit more pro-gun, or there's definitely going to be attempts at gun control at the federal level, but how many people now are willing to push back as opposed to before, even 2 years ago, a year ago. I mean, we have so many people that bought a firearm after watching, finally waking up and smelling the coffee and looking around him like, uh, we should buy a firearm. Let's make it a priority and let's just do it. And they did it. So many first time gun buyers, so many people that maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, never imagined themselves owning a gun ever. They never felt the need to. And now they're a gun owner and they just happen to have an AR-15, or they just happen to have a Glock 9mm pistol, or they just happen to have whatever. So the national push on gun control, especially with something like HR 127, where we're very simply just copying the homework from the '94 Clinton assault weapons ban, the crime bill. Like we're just dusting off the ancient playbook from the '90s and hoping that's going to somehow work in 2021. And now you have all of these brand new gun buyers who just bought firearms and they're glad they have them, and they have a practical value in their lives. And then we're going to bring this like microwave leftovers from the '90s, literally Joe Biden and the Clinton era stuff, trying to present that and just shovel that on the plate of prospective. No, it's not, dude. No. Um, which is the source of another almanac, which I've meant to put out for a while now. But I think gun control is essentially dead. Is dead. If your aim is to prevent people from having firearms, it's dude, it's over. It's done. Like that. There's no way. Like, yeah, sign whatever piece of paper you want. It's not going to change the fact we have hundreds of millions of firearms in this country. Not to mention 3D printing and everything else. The hardware section at Home Depot or Lowe's is not going anywhere overnight. Like, dude, it's not. It's over. The genie's out of the bottle. You're not putting it back, and especially from a social, political kind of side of things, with so many first-time gun buyers this past year, um, dude, it's over. Like, if your mission is gun control, like you have to understand that that shit is done, effectually done. Which is a whole side topic. So anyway, from what I've seen for the past over a year now in the gun shops, if I was in favor of gun control and I wanted to push that, dude, it's over. It's effectually fucking over. There's no like the writing is on the wall and it's been there for a while, the whole past year. Like this shit's done. And now you have a lot of first time gun buyers that never considered themselves gun people or pro gun. Maybe they weren't anti gun. Maybe they were just kind of hanging out in the middle and they just never thought about it. Dude, it's over. Look how many people have joined our ranks. And it's not because the NRA told them to. It's not because you and I scared them to do it. It's because they woke up and smelled the coffee and they looked around and they said, fuck this. I'm not having a break in my house again and not having a gun. So that's just kind of where the boots meet the ground, where the rubber meets the road. I've seen that this whole past year. There's so many brand new people into guns, and that shit's just not going to happen. So anyway, I apologize, everybody, getting a little bit off target here. I've had a couple adult beverages. I'm just trying to keep it all together. Let's see. I find George Washington to be fascinating. Yes, I've actually been to Mount Vernon. Very cool. Very interesting. He had like that bunker underground ice house where he could have ice all year round. He was right on the side of the river. He had plenty of ground and everything. He did have slaves. There you go. He had that too. And there was a pretty nice living history contingent that worked the grounds of Mount Vernon every day. And that topic was not hidden from. It was openly discussed of like, hey, this is kind of what it was. But George Washington, I think, is a very fascinating. Some people might be surprised. He's not my personal favorite founding father, but I do find him very interesting and definitely worth the study. And really, if there ever was an example of a very flawed person who found himself, I guess, kind of that Teddy Roosevelt thing of leadership is not a choice. It's just you being thrown into a position and how are you going to deal with this? He's probably the apex example of having a lot of shit thrown on his shoulders that he did not ask for, and he fucking excelled. And did way more than was asked of him. Was he flawed? Yes. Did he, practice slavery? Was he a slave owner? Yes. Which I have to say that for those who suddenly discover history, the PC culture that wants to like shit on everybody ever, and suddenly they're cracking open a history book for the first time ever. Yeah, yeah, there you go. But there was a lot of other things going on. A very fascinating person. A lot of shit put on his shoulders. So maybe he deserves his own. Maybe I should do an almanac for the major founding fathers, and in fact, include other founding fathers that you may not have heard of. Um, so that would be interesting, especially from the Anti-Federalist Papers. Everybody talks about the Federalist Papers. I hope everyone's kind of read that, but nobody really talks about the Anti-Federalist Papers. And even moving back to Thomas Paine or Thomas Hobbes and Paine, all those guys like from the Enlightenment, the thinkers that kind of eventually moved into the American Revolution. Maybe there's some almanacs I should do about the important people there. So I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. Let's see. Why do some people try to argue that Washington was a bad leader? So from his military experience in the French Indian War, or if you're not in America, you would refer to that as the 7 days or 7 years war. The French Indian War, which predates the American Revolution, back when he was a colonel in the British militia. The very limited military and combat experience he had wearing a red coat and part of the British Empire at that time, again predating the American Revolution, the very limited combat or military experience he had was fucking shitty. He sucked. Just there's no way around it. It was just blunders and failures and shittiness. And so fast forward to the American Revolution, where he eventually is asked to become, the commanding general of the Continental Army. I mean, it's that talk about a rags to riches from a leadership perspective story. It was. I I may not necessarily agree with it when we're looking at the big picture of general and eventually two-time president George Washington. I may not agree with everything saying that he was a bad leader, but I definitely, especially from his beginnings and some of the things that happened during the campaigns during the Revolutionary War, and then later in his presidency, I can't fully cut down on people that say that maybe he was not the most effective leader at certain times. So again, that's not the shit on him. I think he is the example of showing up with the leadership and rising to the occasion to make this thing happen, even if he didn't. It was a lot of effort on his part. It's not the first thing on the list of things he wanted to do, but he realized he was like, he's the man. This is the mission. This is the moment. Let's do it. And he did it. But I can't necessarily subtract from the people that would try to make an argument that he was not the best leader, especially at certain times, especially during the French American War. But I'll let you guys read into the history of that. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I heard that the USA could have around 400 million firearms. I don't know if it's quite that many, but then again, I don't know. The federal government doesn't know. The ATF doesn't know. Firearms manufacturers don't know. Historians don't. Like, nobody actually knows. There's no way. There's no actual way to know how many guns are out there. But I would say at least 300 million, because if you look at all the guns ever made and all the private ownership of firearms and how many gun sales we're doing every day and every year, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, Yeah, it's probably at least 300 million. I 350, maybe four. That's a pretty easy bet. I'd be very confident with that. It's a lot. It's a lot. You can pretty much guarantee per capita at least one gun to every man, woman, and child, including babies. Like every person. It's a lot. Um, let's see. Tyrants are terrified of an armed populace. I wonder why. Yeah, there's so many historic examples of that from South America to Weimar Republic Germany that turned into Nazi Germany to if your mission is crushing iron fisted control of a population, the absolute last thing you want going on is criticism of yourself, making fun of things that are evil or things that you're doing, and also probably top on the list is people who have guns that can say, "No, we're not going to do that." Historically, that kind of is the consensus on that. Whether you are a fan or not a fan of guns, it just kind of is what it historically is. If your mission is to control people with an iron fist and just make things happen the way you want it to, and you want to be in control completely and absolutely, the biggest monkey wrench in the program are people who have an ability to prevent that from happening to themselves, as King George found out, at least with our history. Let's see. Washington State from Let Me Be Frank. Um, have you seen Mel Gibson, The Patriot? Yeah, I was a kid when that came out. I remember that. Loosely based on history, of course, from the Swamp Fox to the Battle of Cowpens, the two, that's a real person, that's a real battle at the time, but a little bit, it was kind of the cookie cutter Mel Gibson thing of a family man where everything is cool and he loves his family. And then, oh my God, something horrible happens and his family either dies or suffers. And now he has to like go bueno insano and rectify this by just going crazy. So it kind of had that Mel Gibson at the time movie template, but and there were some references, to the Swamp Fox and to the Battle of Cowpens and occupation of Charleston and everything else. Historically, it's not 100% wrong, but there's definitely a lot that we could have done, if you know what I mean. If we're trying to be historically accurate, but I think it was a relatively one thing is the church burning scene where you have the dragoons and everything throwing everyone in the church and burn it to the ground. That despite in American cinema that how evil we may want to portray the British at that time, and there was definitely a lot of awful shit they were doing between the prison ships and everything else going on. That was kind of a bridge too far from what would have been acceptable conduct for flag and general officers of the British military at the time. Where even if it had happened, there would have been some very dire consequences for that shit immediately. So not to defend them, but just defending history. It may not be what people want to hear, but there are some issues with that movie. But also, I think it kind of, I mean, it was good. It was especially post 9/11. It just happened at the time relatively recently. And it was just a big, moment of, American exceptionalism in a cinematic way. And that was, what a time it was when Hollywood would actually produce a movie like that. But anyway, let's see. Love the musket idea. Looking forward to that. Yeah, I think you guys will. I think that the Biden administration better not tread too much on the 2A. Americans are starting to cling to their guns. Yeah, historically, it's something we've always done. In times of trouble, we're uncertain. We just grab the guns. You know, that's historically been what we do as Americans. But then again, there's reasons for that. If you can't, you don't have, at least in a modern context, maybe circa 2005 Hurricane Katrina, where you don't have running electricity, running clean drinking water, you don't have provisions, you're cut off for weeks from law enforcement, fire department, emergency medical services. You're just kind of hanging out for weeks on end. Especially if you got, gangs of looters and robbers and people up to no good, people trying to steal what you have, and they don't care about you, and they'll do whatever they want while they're at it. Yeah, it might be nice to have a firearm, um, which is kind of an essential concept, moving even back to, you know, the 19th century of lots of open spaces, lots of opportunities for being attacked, not a lot of provisions to go around. We just got to make it out here. Um, you know, Firearms kind of a big deal in our country and our history, and whether it's old school Wild West stuff or modern day, perilous situations, having firearms, knowing how to use them, pretty useful skill to have. Let's see. Um, I honestly think that we need more gun making and ammunition factories. They're struggling to keep up with the American demand. Yeah, we were talking with the guys at Barnes Bullets out here. We also talked to Nosler the other day. Some of their reps and everything. I mean, every whether it's federal ATK, what's left of Remington ammunition production, Nosler out here. We got Barnes Bullets, Hornady. Also, we've talked with them recently. Every ammunition manufacturer that I've corresponded with in the past several weeks, like every without question and unanimously across the board, every manufacturer is running their people and they're running their machines 24/7 around the clock. They've invested millions of dollars into more tooling and machinery, hiring more people, opening up more factory space to produce more ammunition, and they still cannot keep up with the demand. I mean, we're looking at you know, 6 quarters worth of backlog, which is and from the commercial to the real world, that means a year and a half of not being able to fulfill the orders that exist for ammunition. It's definitely out of control. It's completely out of control, and it's no, the government is not buying all of it just so we can't have it. It's not that ammunition manufacturers have stopped making it. It's not that whatever. It's just we are buying it. I mean, think about this. If you go to a gun shop and they have 9mm or 5.56 or 22 or any of these calibers that you want to have, and they have a box sitting there, and you can buy a maximum of 2 boxes, maybe. Um, no matter the price, you're going to buy it. At least I would. I would just take a look at it and be like, oh, you guys have this? I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy the maximum amount that you allow me to buy. And it sucks because the price is overpriced and it's not what I was paying a year ago. But I actually managed to walk into my local gun shop, one of the many gun shops. I just walk in, kind of see what's up, and you actually have 9mm ammo. I'm buying it. I'm buying as much as you allow me to buy it. And the problem is, we're all thinking the same way. And also keep in mind, like I just talked about, we have a lot of brand new gun buyers. We have a lot of people that are getting into hunting. I've seen a lot of people who were not gun people, but they want to be self-sustainable, and that includes harvesting their own food and game and hunting. And that means we need to buy a hunting rifle or a shotgun, whatever. So you have people who are brand new to the gun life for whatever reason, whether it's home defense, subsistence, harvesting for food, whatever it is, they are brand new to the game. We have a lot of people and they are trying to get the practice in. They're trying to, so there are some people who are just stockpiling and hoarding and just, you know, maybe a dude in his basement, he's got like 3 million rounds of ammo. Okay, that guy's always going to be there, but it's very few and far between. Really, we have a lot of high turnover on the usage of this ammunition. We got a lot of people trying to practice and learn how to use the first gun they ever bought. A lot of people putting in that practice, and a lot of people that are brand new that need ammo. Not to mention guys like me that have been in the game for a while, and all I want to do is do. I mean, a year ago from now, I was doing about 500 rounds of 9 mil a week, or excuse me, a month, and then about 1,000 rounds of 5.56 a month, and then about 3 bricks of 22 a month. That's how much I was shooting every month. Um, and it is drastically cut down these days compared to those days, even just a year ago. But I still want to shoot. So I'm not buying ammo to just throw it in the basement and never look at it again. I'm buying it so I can actively use it to train and continue to shoot. And also with the added burden of taking other people out that ask me, and people coming out of the woodwork wanting to learn how to shoot or buy their first gun. Okay, I'll take you out. And you know, it's like, oh, I'll buy the boxes of ammo. It's like, you can't buy the ammo. You're just going to have to, give me some cash or Venmo for what I have. But we physically cannot find this ammo. So we're going to shoot it and you're going to pay me for it and I'll take you out. But at the end of the day, it's like, all of that to say, we are creating this ammo crisis, or maybe we didn't create it, but we are continuing to fuel it because we are just want to soak it up and buy it immediately as soon as we see it. And there's no shortage of ammo being produced. There's just it's the eternal supply and demand. The demand is through the roof. It's never been this high in American history. The demand for ammunition and firearms, ever, literally ever. It's never been that. And the supply is only what the supply can be. Especially talking to Hornady and Nosler and Barnes, those are three ammunition manufacturers that are, they care about quality, they care about accuracy, they want to produce a consistent quality product for the customer, where they are not willing to amp up quantity if it means quality is going to suffer. The quality is, rest assured, the quality is not going anywhere. And they're going to try to make more if they can, but the quality is an uncompromising principle. So that's by and large what we see most of the time. So they're still making it 24/7. They're running their people and machines around the clock. They're buying all this infrastructure and overhead for more tooling and machines, more factory space, hiring more people, and they're trying to make as much as they can. And we the people, are buying it up and using it. And occasionally a couple of people there, here and there are, hoarding it and storing it, but really we're buying it up and we're using it, especially all these brand new gun buyers. So I don't know what it's going to end, but probably going to be living like this at least for another year, maybe 2 years. Depends though. It totally depends. Let's see. See, I think that toward the end of Washington's life, he started to believe that slavery was wrong. Um, I don't think so, because, well, historically, he passed away, and it only took about a year till Martha Washington decided to completely free, all the slaves that George Washington had, which fell onto her as property at that time. And it only took about a year, and then she freed all the slaves because she was like, they know that as soon as I die, they all are freedmen. They're free. They're released from this. So I should probably just do it myself before I might die in my sleep, essentially. And I don't know. I don't know if he necessarily thought it was wrong. Um, it's a very complex issue. It's a very dark issue. It's a very sad issue. Um, and unfortunately, it's very common. It was commonly accepted among the world at the time. Um, our founding fathers are kind of working with what they had. They only knew so much change could be done in their lifetime. And at least, thank God, they created eventually a constitution that would open the door for us to walk through to, make a more perfect union and better these things and fix these wrongs and try to right the ship. But at the time, I think they kind of knew there was only so much they could do, and some tried and almost got run out of town and killed for it, trying to, outlaw slavery and everything else in the different colonies they had. Whether it was the House of Burgesses in Virginia or somewhere else. Uh, so that's not to defend anything. That's just to say this is a very, very sad, horrific, um, tragic kind of issue, and it takes a lot of taking off those 21st century glasses to really look through the prism of what was happening at the time and what did people think. So, with all that said, I don't think George Washington necessarily regretted it as much as the peculiar institution at the time. It kind of was the way of the world. Maybe if we're trying to be as generous as we can, and I haven't really seen it in many personal correspondence or entries from him necessarily, but maybe if we're being as generous as we can, maybe Washington believed there should have been some change, but was kind of just working with how the world was at the time, and this is what I'm going to do. Um, but yeah, it's a very tough subject for very many people, myself included, because we'd all like to think of our founding fathers as courageous and great leaders and brave, and they did such a great, wonderful, amazing thing. But it's like, well, they were also human beings like you and I. They were flawed. They had issues. There was things going on. Plus, the world was a very different place at the time compared to now, and there's a lot to unpack there if we care about properly understanding what was going on at the time. So um, that's, I guess, in a nutshell. I mean, I could totally go on. I think I'm going to cut it there. But let's see. Please do a Founder's Almanac. Yeah, I think my Founder's Almanac will include people that you may not have heard of that I think need mention, um, especially people who are not founding fathers but severely inspired them. So let's see. From Pew Pew, where the where's the missus with her Texan accent for some funnies? Um, yeah, she's downstairs. Um, so not here right now. We're we have kind of a thing where we watch. I don't know. I guess both of us enjoy reality TV, not the garbage. Well, sometimes garbage. Our latest thing is Alone. If you guys have seen that, where a bunch of competitors are just dumped off on a random part of the shore or a random piece of terrain, and they have to scout and locate a place to live and survive and everything. You see them trying to do traps and fishing and trying to hunt, and most of them never succeed. And we also watch Forge and Fire. It's a great one. So she's down there. She's probably cutting ahead on a couple episodes, or at least one episode and a half on me, and that's fine. For now, I'd rather be with you guys. So, but yeah, we can get her back. We have a templated video we're going to try to do on Sunday. I don't think it's going to happen because of the weather, but it's going to be Miss Texas, Sabo, that you guys have seen him, my buddy I work with, and then we're going to have one of our coworkers, Megan. So we're going to have two girls, two guys shooting like 5 or 6 different home defense guns. And then me and Sabo are going to talk about it. Miss Texas and Megan are going to talk about how they, what did they like or not like. We're going to look at accuracy results, and then if like, holy shit, goddamn ISIS is coming through your front door, you have to grab a gun. What are you grabbing? And just kind of get that male versus female feedback on felt recoil. We can see the accuracy, but also, like, did this gun work for you? Did it not? Whatever. So we definitely have plans for you guys to have Miss Texas in here a little bit more, and also some other featured guests that you guys haven't met yet. So we'll see. Depending on weather, it may not happen on Sunday, but we're actually we've got that pre-production right now, so we'll see. Love The Patriot as well. I know it is a movie, but it's still great. My favorite around July 4th. Let's see. Did you say that you are cutting it short tonight? When do you think we'll have another Q&A? I'm going to try to stick to every Wednesday, based on my personal schedule. Might have to move to Thursdays, which might be cool because get you all prepped up and ready for Friday. Which kind of reminds me, one thing I've been meaning to roll out is, and I don't know what to call it yet. It's going to be in an almanac or podcast format, but it's not going to be an almanac. And it's going to be hard lessons learned the hard way, where I'm going to talk about some really um, sad or great or horrifying, crazy times in my life where I learned some lessons, and it doesn't necessarily revolve around Second Amendment stuff. It's more about, it'll definitely go in the life, duty, and philosophy playlist, but more about like me opening up more to you guys about, um, where did Mr. Second Amendment come from? What awful fucking failures and mistakes have I made? What kind of life have I lived up until this point, and things that you guys may identify with, and kind of move into that. So maybe you guys might like it, maybe you won't. I think, I'm going to do one of them. I'm going to post it up, see what you guys think, see if you guys want more. But that's something I've been meaning to do for a while, to really just kind of lay it out of like, hey guys, I'm human just like you. These are the mistakes I've made. These are some huge life lessons I learned. And stepping aside from Second Amendment stuff for a second, these are things that might help you, or at least you can reflect on and kind of learn from my failures, or things that happen. So, and that's all kind of in line with the whole project to begin with. From wanting to show you guys shooting videos, pass on knowledge that mostly I've learned the hard way, pass on Second Amendment stuff, give you that passion, or at least understand my passion for our Constitution, our country, our gun rights, our Bill of Rights, individual civil liberties. And that's kind of an all inclusive package. You got to get the good with the bad. So, that's something I'm going to roll out. You guys will see it. And when you see it, you'll know. And then, I'll kind of see what the reception is. And even if the reception is bad or there's not as many views, I'll probably still do more of them here and there. You guys can tune them out if you don't want to listen. But, yeah, that's kind of a new project as well. Let's see. I just hated Antifa trying to tear down statues of the founders last year. Yeah, Antifa is a whole different mess, from a historical standpoint. If the thesis of Antifa or Antifa is to be against fascism, at least the way they claim to see it, the bottom line, if it's an organization that is alleged to be against fascism, the tactics they use are alarmingly fascist in nature. Let's just put it that way. It's kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of a very scary thing on that front. But at the same time, that's a whole separate thing. Let's see, Ben Franklin, my favorite. Yeah, Ben Franklin, hanging out in France for a long time. He was hanging out. He was playing it up. Very smart man. I am a eternal personal fan of, Poor Richard's Almanac, which is where when I do a podcast, I call it an almanac, and that's actually where it comes from Ben Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac. And all those lessons from, a teaspoon of honey is going to attract more flies than a whole jar of vinegar, kind of stuff. Lots of life lessons there. A very, very enterprising, hardworking individual, very wise too. So, even though Ben Franklin was never a U.S. president, that's not necessarily my watermark for success or somebody to really admire. So Ben Franklin is, yeah, very, totally don't disagree that he would be your top favorite, because he's also one of my favorites. Okay, let's keep moving. Y'all should watch the Altered Carbon, which I had some of the firearms in that show. I'll have to look into that. Let's see. You heard of the gun shop shooting that left 2 people dead in New Orleans? Yes, I have, because like that day we actually had, our monthly staff meeting with everyone. We at the gun shop, we go out as a family, as a team. We go out to dinner, um, and then we talk about business. We have some administrative notes or things we got to take care of and talk about, and then we just have dinner, hang out as one big family, and just I'm thankful we actually have that kind of rapport and relationship. It's probably very close to being in the army without being in the army, at least on the civilian side. Especially because some of us are veterans and actually we're all army guys, so we can with the guy I look up to the most, one of our managers, him and I actually spent some of the same time at the same places in Iraq. But the rest of them pretty cool, pretty awesome crew. But anyway, yeah. So when we went to, it was that night we were doing our dinner, and we talked about like, hey, and this is something I've always brought up of like, hey, don't be surprised if you bring out an AR-15 that somebody wants to see, and you're at the counter and you bring it out and you show it to them. Don't be surprised if they start pulling out a loaded magazine, gas that thing up, and point it at you. Um, don't be surprised. Where we live in Utah, it's a very Mormon culture, and that's not to talk badly about it. It's just to say that being born and spending time in New York and then raised in Los Angeles, and Miss Texas doesn't understand it either. She's from Houston, but like where we're from, uh, crime is definitely a thing. Let's put it that way. And out here, it's a very Mormon pioneer spirit kind of mindset. Crime doesn't really happen here. Oh, why would someone ever do that? It's like, man, you should live some life and be the some of the places I've been. Trust me, you would sell someone's soul for a fucking French fry. But anyway, like, don't be surprised you hand somebody a gun and you want to look away for a second, and this dude's gonna gas it up and throw a couple rounds in your back. Like, don't be surprised. I've been saying that since over a year now, and we talked about it. It happened, and that's a larger discussion of there's a lot of things that happen in a gun shop, and especially a gun shop that's also a gun range, or like us, it's a gun shop that's also a gun range with also machine guns and transferable full autos and everything else, like, and destructive devices. Like, there's a lot. Like, we are not running a fucking hamburger stand, and we don't always get to interact with people that are sober or of sane mind. And we're on a busy main street. We got homeless people, drug addicts, we got crazy people coming in. You never know what the fuck is going on. And you can't necessarily, so there's a lot of things that happen at the gun counter level. And it's not even what necessarily people are saying, it's how they're saying it, their body language, what's going on. You can tell over time, you can see the jaw jabbing, you can tell they're on uppers, you can smell pot, you can smell booze. Like, there's things you have to pay attention to, and it's not really what they're saying, it's how they're saying it and how they're expressing themselves. And that's a really weird way that they would say that. And if you do it for years, you start to pick up on that. But working a gun shop, no matter where you are in the country or what you're doing, you're not working a fucking hamburger stand. You are selling firearms, which means you have lost the right to be a piece of shit, which means you have to pay attention. And unlike other jobs, there's certain things you can do wrong that are going to fall on the business, potentially put the license of the business in jeopardy and whatever. But there are also things you individually can do in a gun shop that will put you in federal prison if you fuck that up. So the stakes are high, not just from prison time and fines and everything else personally to you, but we need to make sure we know who is doing what and why do they want to see this and what are they doing and what are they about. So it's a big deal, and that New Orleans gun shop shooting is part of what we talk about. Okay, I'm gonna have to end this. Let me get to these last comments here. Let's see. I think I'll post a link to a paper written about Washington on the comments of one of your videos soon. I think you will love it. Okay, look forward to that. Do any of the upcoming bills worry you? Um, right now, um, not as much. In these times, I never thought I would actually say this. I actually worry more about the First Amendment than the Second Amendment. I still, of course, I'm all about the Second Amendment, always vigilant, writing my letters, and especially doing the phone calls, which matters more to my elected representatives, whether I voted for them or not. I'm still on the Second Amendment case. I'm always about it. But honestly, right now, I'm a little bit more concerned about the First Amendment. Um, so I don't worry about any specific bills right now. HR 127, very skeptical it's going to pass, but I'm also very confident it's not the last time we're going to see something like that try to show up. But anything specifically, I just got things I'm worried about the way I see them right now. Let's see. When will your next almanac be? By the way, I didn't know that almanacs came from Ben Franklin. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. We'll see. Probably in the next week or so, you'll get another almanac. But we'll see about that. It's work has been out of control. Let's see. Fuck a terrorist organization such as Gangster Disciples, Vice Lords, Black to Swim Black. Yeah, I think I need more clarification on that. Let's see. Crime will always be a thing. Violent people always exist. That's why we have the right to defend ourselves. The guns aren't violent. Yeah, no, the guns aren't violent. I mean, I think that's the biggest confusion that, I am not fucking harmless, but I am peaceful by choice, and I'm holding this shit down peacefully and voluntarily, but I am not fucking harmless. And I don't mean like I'm not trying to get back into a lifestyle of violence and crazy shit or combat or whatever it is. I would much like to live my life in peace, but I think that's a distinction a lot of people seem to be confused by that. It's look, I'm peaceful by choice and I'm keeping this shit under control voluntarily, but I am not fucking harmless. And I'm not looking for it. I don't want to go back there. I'm not looking for the violence, man, but it's going to be a fact of life. There's going to be criminals, the criminal element, the insane serial killers, all that crazy shit. They're out there. They've always been out there. They're always going to be out there. And I just want to obey the law, and I just want to live my life and prosper and enterprise and live a healthy, happy life in peace. I'm not looking for problems, but the guns are always going to be there. And like I said, I mean, we've seen a lot of first-time gun buyers this whole past year that, for better or and worse, they've kind of discovered that concept a little bit late to the game, but at least they're still alive to discover that, and they're coming in to get a gun to ensure they can at least have what they have. So, anyway, I got to finish this up. Let me see. Let's see. From Asking America with Mario, how could black people say a noose is racist? Okay. Salem witch trials. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something I won't get into for this one. But what something is versus what it's hijacked to be used for versus what an association with historic merit is used to grab onto a visual or an image or an identification or something, and then it's viewed as something else. That's a very that's probably the biggest can of worms that I'm just going to, full disclosure, not address right now, because that's a very complex subject, and I'm not I don't physically don't have the time right now to deal with this properly. But okay, let's see. Thank you for the content, Mr. 28. Well, I'm going to wrap this up by saying I thank you guys for all being here. Thank you for the comments and questions. Sorry it's been a while since I've done a live Q&A. Things have been a little bit busy, been a little bit crazy. I'm sure you guys have had a lot going on in your lives as well. I'm just glad you guys are here. Sorry, my production quality sucks. It's not the high speed graphics and visuals and things of other channels, but I do really appreciate you guys for being here. And as always, I like to be very just upfront with you guys. Just tell it like I see it. This is what's going on. This is our country, and you have a voice too, and I like to hear it. I'm just glad you guys are here for that. So I'm glad you guys, are willing to listen as well, and have me listen to you guys. So just glad you guys are here. Last thing I'll leave you guys with, the Black Best Musket Project. The Like I said much earlier, this is a concept I've been thinking about since about mid 2019. When I was still active duty, I was still doing my thing, and I was about to get out. And I'm thinking about other things, but this is a concept I had in mind for a while. So the name, the Black Bess musket, comes from the Brown Bess musket, which by and large was the standard issue musket of the Continental Army at the time. But it moves into the concept of, I mean, our founding fathers had many, if we really want to get in the weeds on that, they had many different types of muskets, from the Kentucky and Pennsylvania long rifles to the Brown Bess muskets to the captured Enfields from the British. I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, they were grabbing everything that wasn't bolted down. Cannons, especially, the siege of Jersey and everything else, and Ticonderoga and Colonel Knox and everything, grabbing artillery with the privateers and gunships on the seas. I mean, our founding fathers were literally grabbing anything they could get. But by and large, the Brown Bess musket was a symbolism for, I mean, the standard issue musket of the Continental Army, but it was the idea of having a musket. If you were a military age male, if you were a capable person, you were expected to have a musket, shot and powder, provisions, everything you needed. That if it's like 3 in the morning, you're getting woken up, it's like, hey, dude, the British are coming, some Paul Revere stuff. Like, we got to go. You got about a minute, grab your stuff and go. And you might be out for weeks or months on end. You may not, if you come home, you may not come home soon. And you got to have what you need. You got to have something you're providing in terms of a weapon, a musket that can survive defensive operations of the community, the township, your family, your people. It's going to survive austere conditions, the rain, the rust, the mud, and just being used and carried and dragged around and used in action, everything else. So, the Brown Bess musket, to kind of finish on that, it still is in the infantry community. We have it on our EIB, Expert Infantry Badge. We still have it on our CIB, the Combat Infantry Badge. It still is kind of that American symbolism of the everyman's musket that he could grab and just go and get results and do that defensive or action capability needed. So I was always thinking, well, in 2019, or I guess eventually 2021, what would the everyman's modern Brown Bess musket look like? Where obviously it's not a flintlock and it's not black powder, but it's going to be a rifle that the everyday American is going to grab onto. And this thing can do everything from home defense, local defense, to whatever else is needed. Where we've had riots, we've had civil unrest, we've had, especially recently with the weather in Texas, with the power and the water and everything going out, where things might be uncertain, there might be hostile or evil forces on the move, and things happening local to us, and we need to grab something to protect ourselves from that. What would that thing look like if it was the Brown Bess back in the 18th century? What does it look like now? So to me, that would be the AR-15. Not to say you can't have a nice AK setup, or if you're in a band state, you got a Mini 14 or something, like that. But really, if options exist, it would be an AR-15. So basically, the Black Bess musket project is going to be setting up a build criteria of going through every major part, the lower receiver, the lower parts kit, the trigger, the pistol grip, moving into the barrel, the bolt carrier group, the upper receiver, the hand guards or rail, whatever it's going to be, like every major component of the rifle that would matter, and setting a criteria of like, hey, it's basically the whole thing is a choose your own adventure. Hey, build whatever you want to build. There's no, you need to buy this exact part and this exact part and that exact part. It's more going to be like a criteria of like, hey, this is the minimum quality standard for a fighting rifle that is going to survive. It's going to survive getting rained on, getting bashed around, dropped, dragged, rusted, whatever. And we are giving it the best chances of success to serve us in extenuated circumstances, austere conditions. Eventually, we pass away, we pass it to our family, and it still has to serve them as well. The choices we make in building this thing now are going to serve ourselves and our future family later, potentially. But we have a minimum list of criteria and things we're looking for. So go out there and build it, essentially. And here are the minimum quality standards where we're not trying to do like a $3,000 build of an AR-15. We're trying to keep it budget friendly for the everyman, so everybody can afford it. Everybody can try to tap into it. But there's an undying insistence on that durability quality standard that we will not go below certain standards, and we are not willing to buy garbage. It has to be quality. Here's the parameters. And a quality mil spec trigger is exactly what this thing dictates. That is the requirement. But if you have extra money and you want to, by all means, go get a Geisley SSA aftermarket trigger. That's not needed, but if you got the money and you want to do it, go for it. But here's the bare minimum, and this is what we're trying to do. And basically, setting up, I've already got about half the parts, but setting up criteria on how we do the modern brown Bess musket in the form of the black Bess that's going to serve you well, be able to actually survive, potentially high firing schedule, lots of abuse, neglect, being bashed and dropped and thrown around, and just extenuated life in austere conditions and just having to work. Here's the criteria, go build it. So that is the Black Bess musket project that I've talked about. You guys have probably heard it in some videos in the past. But I got about half the parts. I got another critical part coming in about 4 days, trying to piece together all the parts on that. But I think you guys might enjoy it, or it might be a peek into a way we can build a quality AR-15 that's going to be a valid fighting rifle that's going to serve us and potentially future generations if needed. So that is the Black Bess musket project, which I've been putting most of my time, money, and effort into. And hopefully you guys will enjoy the content. Hopefully in a couple days here, you guys will see that. So anyway, I'm going to have to end this. I am a little bit over time. But again, wrapping it up, appreciate you guys for being here. I love hearing from you guys. I'm glad you could be here. I'm sorry it hasn't been as constant as it's been before, but I'm just glad you guys are here and appreciate the engagement. It makes me feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. I mean, I already know that anyway. The Second Amendment is always going to be worthwhile, our Constitution, Bill of Rights, but I'm just glad to have you guys with me and help me kind of reflect, read your comments, and really refine what I got going on. So at least for tonight, this is going to be it. But thank you guys for being here. And I will see you guys next time, hopefully in a week from now. All right. Take it easy, guys.